Hey everyone, Ten here with a quick build update talking about my Youga Spacetime illusion. This was my season starter, and it was farming Timemark 7 with very little investment. Since then, it's taken quite a bit more investment to smoothly farm 8.0 and 8.1 with a somewhat tenuous ability to farm 8.2. And I think this is about as far as I'm going to take the build, so this is both a build update and also the final version. Overall, I'm very happy with the build, both in the fact that it's an extremely fast farmer because 90% of my damage is passive, and also the fact that it's reasonably tanky, although admittedly, once you start getting into 8.2+, those rares and watcher projections really do start hurting. So if you want to see what I play next, then do be sure to get subscribed, maybe leave a like while you're down there. But for now, let's get into things, and first up, a very quick disclaimer. This is not a full guide. I'm not going to be going over everything, I'm just going to be going over what changed from my previous video. So if you want to know the choices I was making originally, and more importantly, why I was making them, check that out, it's going to be down below, and it'll give you all the info that you need about how to play the build. Okay, so in terms of main skill, not too many changes, I just swapped crit chance for crit damage because I got enough crit chance to cap my crit without it. Defensively, I'm now not using any defensive skills because I haven't really needed them. Ultimately, as I began using activation mediums to automate everything, this felt like the better option. In terms of auras, it's mostly the same, except now I'm using Ice Imbue for additional damage and clear, reserving it on my life. Yep, this is a low life build now. Candle-wise, I've got a good old Soul Eater candle to go fast, and then a generic damage candle. In terms of talents, I haven't made any significant changes. However, I have changed my Definity slates quite a bit. I'm still going for things like Spell skill level, Cold skill level, Max Focus Blessing, all this fun stuff. I tried to get a little bit of extra Max Energy Shield, and this happened to roll very well by getting the chance to gain Agility and Tenacity blessings. +1 Max Spellburst, and immediately starts charge upon entering low Energy Shield. This is why I dropped the defensive skill. And then, additionally, I paired that with a couple of Corner of Divinities, this to gain additional regain from missing life, also Max Energy Shield per int, and some Energy Shield regain, restores missing Energy Shield when suffering a severe injury, and charge cannot be interrupted for 1 second. So when I hit low Energy Shield, my charge starts, and it can't be interrupted for 1 second, giving me a good recovery window. Last time I just have is Fallen Starlight. If it had a bunch of defensive stats, it's pretty okay and not very good. You can use almost anything with useful stats instead of it. Now, I haven't exactly been keeping track of how much I've spent on my gear. If I had to do a really rough estimate, I'm just going to throw out a number and say about 2,500 FE, about half of which is the hero memory, which, while very nice, absolutely isn't mandatory. With that said, prices are constantly subject to change, and this is just a really rough estimation based on me kinda sorta eyeballing it, so definitely don't take it as any sort of fact. Also, while a lot of my gear does have T0 mods, there's honestly not that much difference between the T0 and T1 versions with the exception of the amulet. In that case, you will absolutely want the T0. Everything else, a T1 is totally fine, T0 just happens to be better. Think of it as icing on your cake. Next up for my gear, I've swapped over to full Energy Shield, and I did drop even my 2-piece bonus. So for weapons, +3 spell skill level, this one I ended up crafting myself. It was quite expensive as a result. Crafting on item level 100 gear is rather tricky now. But I did get T0 cast speed, so at least there's a consolation prize. Then we have this Wiseman's Dagger, which I bought for 300 FE as is. It's not the best. In fact, I want flat damage to spells instead, but for 300 FE with the elevation and with fairly good stats, it seemed like too good of a deal to leave on the trade house. In terms of my ring, it's the same as always. Other ring, I got this kind of really nice 5x T1. I ended up getting it fairly cheap and elevating the Energy Shield and fire damage to attacks and spells. This is just a big old res stick to get some defenses. Curse on hit would be nice, but it's absolutely not required. For my belt, the main goal is to get the minus additional damage taken on low mana and buff up my chest piece as much as possible. Chest piece, you just want as much ES as possible since it gets buffed by the belt, hence the nice old T0 here. For my gloves, I went with spell skill level and fervor for damage. All the other stats are pretty darn mediocre. The boots are exactly the same as I've been wearing for a really long time. I got these for cheap early on, and I just haven't felt the need to change them. Now for my helmet, instead of Surging Inspiration, I went with an ES helmet. This is more defensive and pretty much the same damage. It's slightly less, but it solves all my mana problems, so I'm going to consider that a win. I should fix the energy someday, though. For my amulet, I just crafted this fairly recently to get the beacon. This is an elevated mod for +1 Spellburst, and I have an open prefix that I'm thinking of swapping over to +1 cold skill, but I haven't decided if I need the sealed mana here, hence why it's not fully crafted. I guess since I'm moving on from a build, it's never going to be. Still, it overall was a pretty nice piece that I also crafted myself. Now, the last major change is I'm no longer using Twisted Field, instead I have Arcane Contract. This is because I now have a realm-breaking soul sink. This gives me Twisted Field for free, so I get to use both. Essentially, this is one extra link of damage, which definitely seemed to be worth it. Aside of that, I'm still going with things like the crit damage spell skill level or spell skill level plus other stuff. And of course, focusing on the max Spellburst here. So that's all the major changes that I've made for this build. It's taking it from farming Timemark 7 very quickly to farming Timemark 8 very quickly. I'm sure you could push it further, but pushing it further is going to get quite expensive, and honestly I'm kind of bored of the build. I've been playing it for about a week and I want to move on to something else. So what am I going to play next? I don't know. Get subscribed and you'll find out soon. Now with all of that said, I have been able to take down 8-2 near space with relative ease. Some of the rares are quite tanky and do get problematic. I've taken down some of the bosses on 8-1 and 8-2 that take a little bit. It's not the fastest fight. 8-0 is super quick. 8-1, 8-2, not quite there yet in terms of speed. I did try 8-2 deep space. While I did clear the map, I absolutely would not advise it in the current gear. But at the end of the day, I wasn't playing this build because it had the highest single target potential, or could just easily crush 8-4 deep space. That wasn't the point. The point was that it can start from basically nothing. It's very consistent and reliable, farms quickly, and helps me make enough money to play something else. Now, if you do want to keep playing the build and want to push the damage further, there's a couple things I can think of which you could swap to, which might scale a bit better. Number 1, Ice Lances if you want single target damage. Ice Lances has much higher single target potential than Ring of Ice, but it comes at a cost of some of your clear speed. On the other hand, if you want both clear speed and damage potential, maybe consider something like Chain Lightning. And hey, you can even convert the damage over to cold if you don't want to deal with electricity. And last up, Thunderbolt Overload. The skill and parabolics in general have gotten quite a bit of buffs recently, and I think this could be incredibly powerful, but I haven't had time to play with it yet. Who knows, maybe in the future I'll be making a parabolic-based Thunderbolt Overload Youga illusion. Let me know down below if you want to see something like that. Now if you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out the video I made recently where I went over how I made my first 3000 Flame Elementium this season, or if you want to know more about the build, do check out the full guide, which I'll link up in the card and down below. Or you can head over to Maxroll and check out a builder where I exported my character. That'll also be in my Discord. Last up, if you've seen all those videos and want even more content, maybe check out my recent review of Bulwark over on my second channel. That's where I talk about a lot of games that aren't necessarily in the ARPG space. Now before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can all make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is down below. And also, a big thanks to everyone who watched to the end. I hope you enjoyed this build update. It's a little different from my normal style, but I do like making these more relaxed videos. And if you enjoy watching them, then there's probably going to be more in the future. So with that, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.